Welcome to Easily Entertained. My name is Bryson Olson, and here we talk about all the good things of entertainment. Today we are talking about my most recent gaming obsession, being that of the Ori games, the Blind Forest and the Will of the Wisps. These games are just on another level. I just absolutely love them, and I got to share them with you, whether you've played them or not. So no matter which one you are, you can watch this video, okay? There won't be many spoilers. I at least tried. So let's go. So without giving too much away, because I do want y'all to play the Ori games, because they're just fantastic. The story of both of them is fairly similar. You are a little forest spirit named Ori, and the forest you are in has lost its spirit light. In the Blind Forest, it is because it is stolen by a massive owl, Kuro, and in the Will of the Wisps is because there is a decay going through the forest that has caused the spirit light from the spirit tree to shatter, and becomes these little wisps that you have to find. As a little forest guardian, you are given the quest to return the light of the forest and restore balance. A fairly simple hero's quest type story, as a lot of games are. And as you go throughout the story, you get to learn a little bit more about the world and some of the key characters within it. It's not just all black and white. Oh, there's evil. Oh, there's good. It kind of gets a little bit of the gray area, and really your goal is only to return the spirit light to the spirit tree, but you also get to learn why it's necessary, why the spirit tree lost the light, and that's kind of the case for both of the games. And the characters in it, I think, are just like super integral, and for both games there is a major reason why there are certain characters. And I'll start with the Blind Forest while we're talking about this. Their main players, I believe, are Naru, Koro, and Gummo. Those are kind of the three big ones that you run into throughout the game. Naru is like your adoptive parent. Ori grew from the spirit tree kind of as like a leaf, and then becomes the little spirit guardian, and was lost. So when Ori was lost, Naru raises Ori, and you care very much for Naru. They're like this little parental figure. It's very cute until they pass away due to the loss of the light in the forest. Kuro is a giant owl, like I said, that steals the spirit light from the tree. But you eventually learn that it wasn't just out of pure evil. There was a reason that Kuro did it. I don't really want to say, because like it's kind of like a big part throughout the game. Like, I know the game has been out for a long time, but I want you to play it if you haven't played it already, because it's fantastic. But it's not out of just evil. Kuro seems bad, and for most of the game they are, but that's okay. There's a reason why. And then Gummo is the last survivor of a species who you become friends with, and he helps you throughout the game. And eventually he kind of becomes like part of your little family with Naru. And all these characters play just such a good role in the story of the Blind Forest that just kind of brings it all together, and I think it's great. Highly recommend. It just gets you hooked on the franchise. It's perfect. Now for Will of the Wisps, which is kind of interesting because in this one it takes place in a different forest. You get separated from your home forest of Newell and end up in a forest called Nimin, and I hope I remembered these right. I could have looked them up prior to hitting record on this, but I think I got them right. So in this one, you're mostly on your own as you search for Kuro's owlet, Ku, that you and your family have adopted from the previous game. So on your search through Nimin, you meet probably your biggest ally, which is Qualok. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing these right. I read them like this, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing them correctly. So, but this is a giant frog who has protected the forest amidst the decay that I talked about earlier. And you also meet your biggest enemy, which is Shriek, a deformed owl who has lost her way. And she's haunted by her past, especially at the sight of Ku, because Ku is a regular little owlet, like has a deformed wing, but overall looks like a normal owl. But Shriek did not ever look like a normal owl because of the decay. It kind of got to her and it made her a little bit freakish, and that kind of haunts her as she wasn't treated like a regular owlet. And so that's kind of a fun little tidbit of the story in Will of the Wisps. And there are also a few other players in Will of the Wisps, like the Mora Spider, Bower the Bear, and the Moki. But other than the Moki, they are mostly characters that you just kind of encounter once, and they're not like, they're a good part of the game, but they're not like a crazy integral part of the game. But much like the first game, still even this like short-lived encounter characters are still very important to the overall story, and they all interact very well. And I just think it is perfect at bringing this beautiful culmination that ties not just this last game together, but it ties in the first one as well, and kind of brings a good ending to the games. It's very possible we could get a third game as well, but this one kind of like seals the Ori story a little bit, which I just think is fantastic. And I don't want to fully spoil the ending on it, but it is great. I really just want you to play it. So after you hear about the rest of the stuff that I really like in this game throughout this episode, then you should go play both of them for yourself, because they are just fantastic. But only after, please. Let me sell you on the other stuff too. I am a huge fan of platformer style games. Mario was always big in my family, Donkey Kong. I'm even playing Metroid Dread right now. And I like open world games too, don't get me wrong. But platform games, I just think even when they're non-linear, I just find them really fun, and I find them easy to really get into, which I really like. And so that is something that's always intrigued me, and the Ori series just seemed like a natural next step with that kind of game, and they just nail it right out the gate. I first played the Blind Forest a few years ago, I believe 22, maybe like Christmas 22, because I got like a Nintendo gift card for Christmas, and funny enough, that's how I started playing Will of the Wisps recently. And then I bought the Blind Forest Definitive Edition and got into it so much that I 100%ed the game, which was so fun. And it's one of the first games that I've been able to do that for in like quite a long time. So I was pretty proud of that, I'm not gonna lie. But it was just the way they have further developed the, I believe it's called Metroidvania style of game, where it's a platformer, but it's not exactly linear like Mario or Donkey Kong is. It's just an open world platformer, I think, is kind of what that kind of style of game is. Just the way they've further developed that style is just, I think, incredible. The first of which being is the map. Already in the Blind Forest, you have so many places to go. Areas that are puzzles or tricky to get to, hidden areas, and you can easily spend hours just trying to get into every area. And in Will of the Wisps, it is the same thing, but it's an even bigger map, so you got a lot more to do. And in both games, you even have like a warp mechanic to quickly get to the next area you want to discover things in. And this is really nice when you're trying to 100% the game, because you can 100% an area, jump to another one, jump to another one. It's fantastic. But even though they have the warp mechanic, the game controls are also so much fun, and sometimes you don't even want to warp, especially as you get further in the games and you get the bash ability. Holy shit, let me tell you, they knew what they were cooking at Moon Studios when they added this mechanic. If you don't know, if you haven't played the games or you don't remember, bash is where you can launch off an enemy or a projectile and use their momentum to get to places you couldn't. Essentially flying, but not actually flying. It's like rockets in very short bursts, basically. And in certain areas, everything is pretty much done in the air. In fact, in Will of the Wisps, the final battle is pretty much done exclusively in the air and not on the ground. Like, you can be on the ground at certain portions, but it's usually just easier to be in the air for that battle. But oh, it's fantastic, and it just works so well. And even beyond Bash, the controls are just super fun and intuitive to use. So it's just fun to traverse the world. I find it very akin to the PlayStation Spider-Man games, like the Insomniac games, where it's just enjoyable to get around. Like, while the map is huge, and sometimes you do want to warp if it's like complete opposite ends, from certain areas you do just want to traverse it by yourself. And you can run into some buggy areas here and there too. But like 99% of the time, it works fantastic and just has you enjoying the exploring part of the world. And trust me, you want to explore the world. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one thing I think both games just do really well is the abilities that you learn and get. While often they're used whenever necessary, most of the time there are different ways to go about a certain problem because of the abilities that you're given. You don't always have to go through it exactly one way, which I love that it lets you do. Like, sure, to get to a really high area, you're probably going to need to use Bash. You sometimes can't get there any other way. But other abilities sometimes allow you to get into certain areas without the needs for the ones that the game would expect you to take. I just think that's kind of genius how they went about these games, pretty much letting you go as you please and not always guiding you. Like, if you hit a certain area in a part of the map, then yeah, it'll guide you to a certain story aspect. But otherwise, you can kind of just go throughout and just follow the main story beats and otherwise do whatever you want. And that I find is so much fun. I think it just lets the world feel even bigger than it is. I think especially in Will of the Wisps, it's already big. So making it feel like a bigger world and not more enclosed, I think is just great. And it doesn't restrict the gameplay, which combined with this next aspect that I hinted at, makes it pretty much a perfect game for me. So what really brings together the Ori games has to be the visuals. And I'm going to be real. They are not like the most mind-blowing visuals that you've ever seen. It's not like super hyper-realistic stuff. It's not going to win any awards for like graphics processing or whatever. It's not ray tracing or that kind of stuff. Like, it's not that kind of amazing graphics. It is more amazing stylized graphics. They just know how to utilize them to the point where they're just stunning. It's absolutely perfect. It's stunning and stylized, and that is perfect for this franchise. And I think it's perfect for any platformer like this. And I think it's just really fun. In the first game, everything was actually 2D, as a lot of platformers are. And it was designed by hand. It's kind of animated in parallax, so you get that the foreground moves faster than the background does. So it kind of gives that illusion of depth. I think it's fantastic in the first one. And in the second game, they did switch it to a lot of 3D elements, particularly for the characters, but with the first game's stylized look. So there were certain aspects where I was like, oh yeah, that is a 3D model, but it like fits the world because of how it's designed. There are several models where I was like, I totally didn't realize that that was 3D until I was researching on it, which I thought was really fun. And that kind of just allowed them to take the graphics a little bit further, as they could use 3D techniques with the 2D style. Like, a big example for that is the lighting. These games know how to use lighting to its fullest degree. It's fantastic. Making these stunning compositions, basically looking like you're playing a game within a painting the entire time. Oh, it's so good. Or an illustration. Illustration might be slightly closer. In the first game, they're essentially pulled off just through compositing most of the time, where like post-production effects are added, making the lights react in certain ways. But the technical advancement in the second game, where they're using the 3D elements, allows everything to pretty much actually react to lighting, which allows you to be immersed that much further. Like, it's not that the first game was bad in any means. In fact, it's still stunning, but they just pushed it even further than the first game was, which I think is great. And I also think their use of stylized visuals just does exceptionally well for the characters and creature designs, because it allows everything to have its own silhouette, its own color scheme, especially based on where it is in the world. And it just allows everything to blend together in the world that much easier, while also at the same time being able to stand out, if that makes sense. It isn't about the realism and more just about immersing you in the world. Everything feels unique but fits together in a way that just blends perfectly, and you forget that it's all being brought together. And tying these visuals in with an unbelievable sound and music design team, oh my gosh, you just got a game of the year on your hands. It's fantastic. The music in particular is just, it's astounding. They did not have to go that hard. Every track fits just right, especially for like the big emotional moments. It's like quick and heavy for those super suspenseful scenes. It's kind of light and almost spiritual for the emotional scenes, and it's like really joyful and fun when like a character's reunited or they accomplish something that was really difficult, and it just makes it feel really satisfying when you get to that point, and that is always perfect for a game like this. And both games just know how to use every good aspect of a game and bring them all to fruition in the same project. They hook you with the story while providing also a solid game experience, which makes you want to learn more about the story, while also giving the story these perfect visuals that bring everything together that makes the gameplay enjoyable and the story, and you just want to look more into it, and you just can't look away, and it's fantastic. Even when you're being assaulted by this damn spider, oh my god, it took me so long to get past this area in Will of the Wisps. It was pissing me off. But anyways, Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps are games that just deserve all their hype. And I think sometimes people forget about them almost, just because it gets swept up in the sea of AAA titles where it's all about the graphics or processing capability, when in reality these ones can be just as enjoyable, and like in terms of both of them were really revolutionary compared to the bigger games as well. Like they all were on that same level, even if like certain techniques were not as mind-blowing for the time. They're still fantastic, and I think makes them pretty much perfect in my eyes. So now we have our rating, and we usually do our rating at the end of the episodes, but seeing as the Ori franchise are video games, the rating scale that we usually have doesn't necessarily work, because it's usually for movies and TV, which is a vastly different medium. As such, while I don't always like doing this because I don't feel like it fully accomplishes the rating, I'm going to go on the traditional 10 scale. And of course, I'm putting the games at a solid 10 out of 10. Like, even despite some of them having like certain little bugs in them, everything is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with these games, in my personal opinion. But I'm going to have to figure out a new rating scale for anything that isn't movies and TV, because I have some other projects throughout this year that I want to talk about that also are not movies or TV. So our rating scale will have to slightly adjust for those ones. But I do give Ori a 10 out of 10, as I will probably find myself revisiting these and enjoying them just as much as the first time. And they're fantastic. And if you've played them, you'll probably know. But if you've played them and have a different ranking, let me know down in the comments below. And when you play them and haven't played them already, you also got to let me know what your rating is. So just saying, you should go do it right now. Okay, that is your next project. That's your homework for this episode. Go and play the Ori games. They're awesome. You won't regret it. But that is it for this episode of Easily Entertained. If you enjoyed, please leave us a like and subscribe so you can be notified of all new episodes when they come out every Tuesday. It's always a great time. And if you have any suggestions on entertainment properties that you would like to see on this show, please let us know down in the comments. But until next time, bye!